The earring caught the sunlight as it rested at the bottom of the pool, winking like it knew a secret that Vivian Doherty didn't. She stood there, wrapped in her silk bathrobe, coffee growing cold in her hand, staring at that foreign object that had no business being in her home. It wasn't hers. She never wore costume jewelry. The cheap, gaudy piece, with its fake diamonds and turquoise stones, was something Vivian wouldn't be caught dead wearing, especially in court. Her own earrings were elegant pearl drops, or simple gold hoops, carefully selected over years of building her career as one of the most sought-after attorneys in the city. This was someone else's earring, someone who had been in her pool when she wasn't home. Vivian reached for the pool skimmer and fished it out, the morning sun casting long shadows across the backyard. Their beautiful home, with its manicured lawn and infinity pool overlooking the valley, had been her sanctuary for 15 years of marriage. Now, holding this tacky piece of jewelry between her fingers, it suddenly felt like unfamiliar territory. She examined it closer. The backing was still attached, which meant it hadn't fallen off accidentally during a pool party. They hadn't hosted one in months anyway. Her stomach tightened as she recognized what this likely meant, but she needed proof before jumping to conclusions. She wasn't the type to make accusations without evidence. It's what made her successful in the courtroom. She walked back into the house, the earring tucked in her robe pocket. The security system they'd installed 3 years ago recorded everything: the driveway, front door, backyard, and pool area. Bruce had insisted on it after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. "For our safety," he'd said. Bruce, her husband, who was currently sleeping upstairs, oblivious to her discovery. Vivian made her way to their home office and sat down at the computer, pulling up the security footage from the past week. Nothing. The recordings showed empty spaces, static images of their pool and patio with no movement, no visitors, no explanation for the mystery earring. That's when she noticed the timestamps, gaps in the recording, periods missing altogether. Someone had tampered with their security system, and there was only one other person who knew the password. "Morning, honey." Bruce's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, hair still tousled from sleep, wearing nothing but pajama bottoms. At 50, her husband still maintained the athletic build that had first attracted her to him. Broad shoulders, strong arms, the result of his swimming routine and weekend golf games. His blue eyes, usually warm when they looked at her, now seemed guarded, cautious. "You're up early." "The security system," she said, turning to face him completely. "There are gaps in the recordings." Bruce frowned, walking over to look at the screen. "Damn thing must be glitching again. I told you we should have gone with a different company." He leaned over her, the familiar scent of his cologne now somehow cloying. "I'll call them today. Get it sorted out." Vivian nodded, saying nothing about the earring. 20 years as an attorney had taught her to gather all evidence before making her case. "I have to be in court by 9. Judge Williams doesn't tolerate tardiness." She stood up, brushing past him. "Don't forget, I have that conference in San Diego this weekend. Leaving Friday." Right. The women-in-law thing." He followed her to the kitchen, where she poured another cup of coffee. "You'll be gone all weekend?" Was that eagerness she detected in his voice? Vivian stirred cream into her coffee, keeping her expression neutral. "Yes, back Sunday evening." "Well, you deserve the break. You've been working too hard lately." He kissed her cheek, his lips barely grazing her skin before he moved to the refrigerator. "I'll probably catch up on some projects while you're gone. Maybe call the guys for poker." She murmured non-committally, watching him over the rim of her cup. The way he avoided her eyes, the slight tension in his shoulders. Her husband of 15 years was lying, and not very well. Vivian went upstairs to dress for court, selecting a navy suit and pearl earrings, real ones. As she applied her makeup, she studied her reflection. At 48, she still turned heads. Her auburn hair, which she maintained with monthly salon visits, fell in soft waves around her face. Her eyes, once described by Bruce as impossibly green, looked back at her. calculating. She had built her career on being able to read people, to detect deception, to build strategies that protected her clients' interests. Now, she would use those skills for herself. She didn't confront Bruce that day, nor the next. Instead, she made a trip to the electronics store and purchased a small wireless camera disguised as a decorative bird that would blend in with their garden. She installed it herself while Bruce was at work, positioning it with a clear view of the pool and patio doors. Then she waited, reviewing the footage each night after Bruce fell asleep. 2 days later, she had her answer. The footage showed Bruce arriving home early from work, checking his watch repeatedly. 30 minutes later, another car pulled into their driveway. A red convertible she didn't recognize. A woman emerged, young and blonde, wearing large sunglasses and carrying a designer bag that Vivian recognized as a knockoff of an expensive brand. Bruce greeted her at the door with a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. They disappeared inside, and 40 minutes later, they emerged onto the patio. She was wearing a bikini now, and Bruce followed her to the pool with 2 glasses of what appeared to be the expensive champagne Vivian had been saving for their anniversary. Vivian watched, numb, as they swam together, as he lifted her onto the pool's edge and stood between her legs, kissing her as his hands traveled over her body. She watched as the woman dove underwater and emerged, laughing, removing her earrings and placing them on the table beside the pool. Earrings that matched the one Vivian had found. She watched as they went back inside, towels abandoned on the chairs she had selected when they renovated the backyard 3 summers ago. Vivian closed her laptop, her hands steady despite the anger burning through her. She had her evidence now. Her mind, always analytical, was already forming a plan. She wouldn't confront Bruce yet. No, that would come later. First, she would prepare. She had learned long ago that the most devastating blows were the ones your opponent never saw coming. That night, over dinner, she casually mentioned her upcoming conference again. "I've been looking forward to the keynote speaker for months," she said, taking a sip of wine. "She's revolutionized family law practice on the West Coast." "That's great, Viv," Bruce replied, barely looking up from his plate. "I'm sure it'll be fascinating." "Will you miss me?" she asked, her voice light. This time he did look up, a practiced smile crossing his face. "Of course. The house is always too quiet without you." "Liar," she thought, returning his smile with one of her own. But the house wouldn't be quiet this weekend, would it? It would echo with laughter and moans and the splashing of pool water against skin that had no right to be there. It would fill with the voice of a woman who didn't know that she was swimming into a trap Vivian was already setting. As Bruce excused himself to answer a text message, turning away as he always did now when his phone chimed, Vivian's mind raced with possibilities. She needed something elegant but devastating. Something that would leave no doubt about what she knew, but would also be impossible to trace back to her. Something that would use their own patterns against them. Later that night, she lay awake beside Bruce, listening to his even breathing, wondering how long he had been betraying her. Had there been others before this woman? Had she been blind to the signs? No, Vivian Dougherty was never blind to anything. She had simply trusted, and that trust had been betrayed. Well, Bruce would soon discover that betraying a woman who had spent her career demolishing opponents in courtrooms across the state was a dangerous mistake. Vivian's last thought before drifting off to sleep was of the pool, shimmering under the moonlight outside their window. The pool where that woman, Bruce's mistress, liked to float without a care in the world. The pool that would soon become the instrument of Vivian's carefully orchestrated revenge. The following days passed in a blur of preparation and pretense. By day, Vivian Dougherty was the respected attorney, methodically building cases for her clients while maintaining the perfect facade of a happily married woman. By night, she was a detective and strategist, reviewing footage, making notes, and formulating her plan. The young woman, Marina Roth, as Vivian discovered from a text notification that flashed across Bruce's phone while he was in the shower, had visited their home 3 times in the past 2 weeks, always when Vivian was in court or working late at the office, always taking full advantage of their pool, their expensive wine, their home. Vivian learned Marina's patterns from the camera footage. She arrived precisely 45 minutes after Bruce, never came on Tuesdays or Thursdays when Bruce's mother sometimes dropped by unexpectedly, and always spent time in the pool. Marina seemed particularly fond of floating on her back, eyes closed against the sun, completely at ease in Vivian's space. The 3rd time Vivian watched her do this, an idea formed in her mind, a delicious, perfect idea. On Wednesday night, Vivian made a show of packing for her conference, selecting her most professional outfits while Bruce pretended to watch television in their bedroom. "Are you taking the blue blazer?" he asked, his eyes flickering between her and his phone, which he'd been guarding zealously for weeks. "Yes. It photographs well for the panel discussion." She folded the blazer carefully, noting how he immediately returned to messaging someone, Marina, undoubtedly, the moment he thought she wasn't looking. "I've been thinking about our pool," she said casually. Bruce's head snapped up. "What about it?" "The chemicals seem off. I noticed my skin felt strange after my swim yesterday. Perhaps we should have it serviced while I'm away." Relief washed over his face. "Don't worry about it. I can handle the pool. The pH just needs adjusting." "If you're sure," she said, closing her suitcase. "I'd hate for anything to happen to it before summer." That night, while Bruce slept soundly beside her, Vivian carefully extracted his phone from the nightstand. She had observed his pattern for weeks. He always plugged it in on his side, always set it face down, and always kept it locked with a passcode. But what Bruce didn't know was that 2 weeks ago, she had watched him enter that passcode while pretending to check her own email. 6 digits that would now give her the final confirmation she needed. The screen illuminated with messages. Marina's name appeared at the top of his recent conversations, just as Vivian had expected. She scrolled through their exchange, her jaw tightening with each flirtatious message and explicit photo. Then she saw it, the plans for the weekend. Bruce had invited Marina to come early on Saturday. "Good thing I can come early," Marina had written. "Can't wait to get some sun and work on my tan." Bruce had responded enthusiastically, promising her the whole house to ourselves all weekend. Vivian took screenshots, sending them to her own secure email before carefully replacing the phone exactly as she had found it. She lay back, staring at the ceiling, the final pieces of her plan falling into place. She knew Bruce would be sleeping late on Friday, his usual day off. She would be leaving for her conference by 6 in the morning. That would give her plenty of time. Thursday passed with excruciating slowness. Vivian sat through meetings with clients, reviewed contracts, and prepared for an upcoming trial, all while mentally calculating quantities and timing. That evening, she made Bruce's favorite meal, a gesture that seemed to both please and unnerve him. "What's the occasion?" he asked, pouring himself a second glass of wine. "Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband?" She smiled, raising her glass. "Consider it an early goodbye before my trip." Bruce relaxed, clearly interpreting her warmth as ignorance. He had no idea that while he'd been at work, Vivian had purchased exactly 100 lemons from 3 different grocery stores, carefully selected to avoid suspicion. No one clerk would remember a woman buying an unusual quantity of citrus. They now sat in paper bags in the trunk of her car, waiting. "I'm heading to bed early," Vivian announced after dinner. 4:30 comes quickly, and I have a long drive tomorrow." Bruce nodded, already reaching for his phone. "I'll be up soon." She knew he wouldn't. He would sit downstairs, messaging Marina, making plans for their weekend together. Vivian climbed the stairs, her heart pounding not with sorrow, but with determination. The weight of 15 years of marriage pressed against her chest, but what hurt most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the utter lack of respect. To bring another woman into their home, their bed, their pool. That was a level of disrespect she could never forgive. Vivian awoke at 4 in the morning, silently gathering her suitcase and necessities. Bruce didn't stir as she dressed in the dark and carried her luggage downstairs. She placed it by the front door to maintain appearances, then slipped out the back door to her car. The cool morning air carried the scent of jasmine from their garden as she popped the trunk and retrieved the bags of lemons. In the kitchen, Vivian worked methodically, cutting each lemon in half and squeezing it using the electric juicer she had deliberately left out the night before. The quiet whirring noise was masked by the sound machine she had placed in their bedroom, another calculated move. Juice splashed into the large glass container, filling it with tart, acidic liquid. Vivian had done her research. Lemon juice, with its high citric acid content, could cause severe photosensitivity. When applied to skin and exposed to sunlight, it could create a reaction similar to a chemical burn, causing dark, irregular pigmentation that could last for months. Marina, with her fair skin and love of sunbathing, would be the perfect candidate for this reaction. And Bruce, who had spent the past months making a fool of Vivian, would see his carefully constructed affair collapse, along with his mistress's vanity. By 5:30, Vivian had filled 2 large containers with freshly squeezed lemon juice. She carried them to the pool, careful not to spill a drop. The pool lights cast an eerie blue glow as she methodically poured the juice into the water. "Since you want to sunbathe, I'll make sure you get a tan to remember," she whispered into the quiet morning air. The juice dispersed quickly, leaving no visible trace in the large volume of water. She tested the water with her fingertips. No stickiness, no obvious smell. Perfect. Vivian returned to the kitchen, washing the containers thoroughly and placing them in the recycling bin beneath other items. She disposed of the lemon rinds in the garbage disposal, then wiped down every surface. A lifetime of preparing meticulous legal cases had taught her to leave no evidence. At 5:55, she entered their bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, gently shaking Bruce awake. "I'm leaving now," she said, leaning down to kiss his cheek. He stirred, blinking sleepily. "Have a good trip. Call me when you get there." "I will," she promised, fighting the urge to tell him she knew everything. That would come later. "The house is all yours for the weekend." Bruce mumbled something that sounded like, "Love you," before rolling over and falling back asleep. Vivian stood for a moment, looking at the man she had once believed would never betray her. Then she picked up her purse, walked downstairs, collected her suitcase, and loaded it into her car. She backed out of the driveway, drove around the block, and parked on a side street with a clear view of their house. Then she waited. At 7:30, Bruce emerged, retrieving the newspaper and looking around furtively before returning inside. Vivian checked her watch. According to the text messages, Marina wouldn't arrive until around 10. Vivian had time to set up at the small cafe downtown, where she could access the feed from her hidden camera while maintaining the illusion of being out of town. The cafe was quiet when she arrived, just a few early weekend customers sipping their drinks. Vivian ordered a large coffee and settled into a corner table, opening her laptop and connecting to the camera feed. She sent Bruce a quick text. "Arrived safely. Conference registration starts at noon. Love you." He responded almost immediately with a heart emoji, a detail that made her lip curl in disgust. At 9:45, Bruce began moving around the house with purpose, straightening cushions and arranging wine glasses on the patio table. He checked his watch repeatedly, running a hand through his hair. At precisely 10:07, a red convertible pulled into the driveway. Marina stepped out, wearing an oversized sun hat, large sunglasses, and a flowing sundress that did little to conceal her curves. Bruce met her at the door, pulling her into an embrace that made Vivian's stomach turn. Vivian watched as they moved through the house, Marina making herself comfortable in the space Vivian had created. They shared a bottle of champagne, the expensive bottle Vivian had been saving for their anniversary, before Marina announced she wanted to swim. Bruce seemed momentarily concerned, suggesting they stay inside, but Marina pouted. already slipping out of her dress to reveal a tiny white bikini underneath. "You promised me pool time." Marina's voice came through the camera's microphone. "I've been looking forward to working on my tan all week." She stepped toward the pool, dropping her hat and sunglasses on a lounger. "Come on, the water looks perfect." Bruce hesitated, then followed, unable to resist, as Marina lowered herself into the water. Vivian leaned forward, watching intently as Marina submerged herself completely, her blonde hair darkening as it became soaked with the lemon-infused water. Bruce joined her, and they swam together, splashing and laughing like carefree teenagers. After about 20 minutes, Marina pulled herself out of the pool and spread a towel on one of the loungers. "I'm going to catch some sun. It's such a perfect day." She stretched out, her skin glistening with pool water, completely unaware of what that water contained. Vivian checked her watch. It would take about 30 minutes of sun exposure for the reaction to begin. She took a sip of her coffee and prepared to wait. But she didn't have to wait long. Only 15 minutes later, her phone chimed with a text from Bruce. "Hope the conference is going well. Miss you. A diversion." Vivian recognized the tactic immediately. She replied, "Just finished the first session. Very interesting speaker on family law amendments. How's your day?" Bruce, "Quiet. Might do some yard work later." Vivian almost laughed out loud. Yard work, indeed. She returned her attention to the camera feed, where Marina was still sunbathing, occasionally shifting positions to ensure even exposure. Bruce had retreated to the shade with his phone, presumably to continue his deception. At 32 minutes, Marina sat up suddenly, rubbing at her arms. She called out to Bruce, who looked up from his phone. Vivian couldn't hear what Marina said, but her body language conveyed discomfort. Bruce approached, examining her skin, his expression changing from confusion to concern. Marina stood, looking down at herself in alarm. Even through the camera, Vivian could see redness developing on Marina's shoulders, chest, and face, much more intense than normal sunburn. It was time for the next phase of her plan. Vivian sent Bruce another text. The keynote was cancelled. Thinking of driving back early. Could be home by dinner. Would you like that? The reaction on the camera feed was immediate and dramatic. Bruce's entire body tensed as he read Vivian's text. He looked from his phone to Marina, panic evident in his jerky movements. Marina was still examining her increasingly red skin, oblivious to Bruce's new crisis. He approached her, speaking quickly, gesturing toward the house. Marina looked confused, then angry, gathering her things as Bruce continued what appeared to be frantic explanations. Vivian smiled to herself, taking another sip of coffee as she watched the chaos unfold. He had calculated the timing perfectly. Marina wouldn't have time to shower thoroughly before leaving. Any water would dilute the lemon juice on her skin, but wouldn't remove it completely. The damage was already done, the citric acid already working its way into Marina's epidermis, just waiting for more sunlight to complete the reaction. On screen, Marina was now fully dressed, arguing with Bruce in the kitchen. She gestured wildly at her reddening skin, clearly blaming him for her sudden need to depart. Bruce kept checking his watch, his phone, the driveway, anywhere but at the furious woman before him. Finally, Marina stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. Her convertible peeled out of the driveway with a screech of tires that was audible even through Vivian's laptop speakers. Bruce stood in the doorway, watching her leave, then immediately began rushing around the house. Vivian could see him gathering Marina's forgotten belongings, straightening furniture, and disposing of wine glasses. He even ran outside to adjust the pool loungers back to their usual positions, the frantic cleanup of a man desperately trying to hide his betrayal. Vivian's phone buzzed with his reply. "Of course, that would be great. I've just been catching up on some reading. The house is too quiet without you." Too quiet? Vivian almost laughed aloud at the irony. She began typing her response, enjoying the deliberate pacing of her revenge. "Perfect. Should be home around 7. Pick up something for dinner? Too tired to cook." Bruce's reply came instantly. Already planned to make your favorite pasta. Drive safely. Love you. Vivian closed the camera feed and packed up her laptop. She didn't need to watch anymore. She knew exactly what Bruce would be doing, scrubbing away any evidence of Marina's presence, possibly even checking the pool chemicals to ensure nothing seemed amiss. He would be so focused on covering his tracks that he wouldn't have time to warn Marina about what was happening to her skin. Not that a warning would help now. Vivian spent the remainder of the afternoon at a small boutique hotel 20 minutes from their house, where she had booked a day room. She took a long, luxurious shower, washing away the smell of lemon that clung to her hands. She styled her hair, applied fresh makeup, and changed into a comfortable but elegant outfit, armor for the confrontation to come. At 6:45, she checked out of the hotel and drove home, her heart steady despite the momentous shift about to occur in her life. Bruce's car was in the driveway when she arrived. The house smelled of garlic and basil. He really was making her favorite pasta, a detail that struck her as both pathetic and infuriating. The dining table was set with their good china and candles, a bottle of red wine already breathing beside 2 glasses. "I'm home," she called out, setting her suitcase by the stairs. Bruce emerged from the kitchen, dish towel over his shoulder, looking for all the world like the perfect husband. "Welcome back. Dinner's almost ready." He approached, kissing her cheek. "How was the drive?" "Uneventful," Vivian replied, noting the lingering scent of cleaning products beneath the cooking smells. "You've been busy." "Just trying to make things nice for you," he said, returning to the kitchen. "You deserve it after your long day." Vivian followed him, leaning against the doorframe as she watched him stir the pasta sauce. "I noticed you took a swim today." Bruce's spoon paused momentarily before resuming its motion. "Just a quick one. It was hot this afternoon." She murmured, studying his back. "The water looked inviting when I arrived. I considered joining you for one before you started dinner." "You should have texted," he said, still not turning around. "I would have waited." "No need. I wouldn't want to interrupt your day." Vivian moved to the refrigerator, extracting the open bottle of champagne, noticeably depleted from when she had last seen it. "Celebrating something?" Bruce finally turned, his expression carefully neutral. "Just had a glass while cooking. You know I enjoy it with pasta prep." "With pasta prep," Vivian repeated, examining the bottle. "Interesting choice for cooking. This was for our anniversary." "Was it?" Bruce's voice pitched slightly higher. "I didn't realize. Sorry about that." Vivian replaced the bottle, closing the refrigerator with deliberate gentleness. "Don't worry about it. We can get another bottle." She moved to the table, running her finger along the edge of her plate. "Beautiful setting. Almost like you're trying to impress someone." "Just you," he said, bringing the pasta to the table. "How was the conference? Before it was cancelled, I mean." Illuminating. Vivian took her seat, allowing Bruce to serve her. "I learned quite a lot about deception and its consequences." Bruce paused, pasta tongs hovering over her plate. "Legal deception? Like perjury?" "All kinds of deception." She smiled up at him, enjoying the flash of uncertainty in his eyes. The most interesting discussion was about electronic evidence, how nothing is ever truly deleted or hidden anymore. Fascinating subject. Bruce swallowed visibly, serving himself before sitting across from her. "Sounds relevant to your practice." "Very." Vivian took a sip of wine, watching him over the rim of her glass. "Did you know most people don't realize their home security cameras can be accessed remotely? Or that deleted footage can often be recovered?" Bruce's fork clattered against his plate. He quickly recovered, offering a strained smile. "Technology these days? It's something else." "Indeed it is." Vivian twirled pasta around her fork, maintaining eye contact. "I had an interesting case last month. Wife suspected her husband was bringing women to their home while she worked. She installed a small camera, one of those decorative birds people put in gardens. Caught everything, even conversations by the pool." The color drained from Bruce's face. "Vivian, Your pasta is getting cold, she interrupted, her voice sharp. Wouldn't want your hard work to go to waste. They ate in strained silence, Bruce barely touching his food, while Vivian methodically consumed hers. The pasta was indeed perfectly prepared, one of the few domestic skills Bruce had mastered during their marriage. It struck her as deeply symbolic that he had used this particular talent tonight, as if good pasta could somehow erase his betrayal. "How was your mother last time you spoke to her?" Vivian asked casually, breaking the silence. Noelle mentioned wanting to visit soon. Bruce seemed relieved at the change of subject. "She's good. Still talking about coming for that long weekend next month. I should call her tomorrow," Vivian mused. "It's been a while since we had a proper chat. She'd like that." Bruce pushed his plate away, his appetite clearly gone. "Vivian, about what you were saying earlier." "I wasn't saying anything," she cut him off. "Just making conversation." The sudden ringing of Bruce's phone shattered the tense atmosphere. He jumped, fumbling to silence it, but not before Vivian caught sight of the caller ID. Marina Roth. Bruce declined the call, returning the phone to his pocket with shaking hands. "Aren't you going to answer that?" Vivian asked innocently. "Might be important." "Work," Bruce muttered. "Can call back Monday." "On a Saturday night? Must be urgent." Vivian dabbed her lips with her napkin, her eyes never leaving his face, especially since it's the third call in the last 5 minutes. Bruce stiffened. "You noticed." "I notice everything, Bruce." She placed her napkin beside her empty plate, "including earrings that don't belong to me at the bottom of our pool." The phone rang again. Bruce closed his eyes briefly, as if praying for it to stop. When he opened them, the pretense was gone. "Vivian, we need to talk." "No, Bruce. We needed to talk weeks ago, when you first started bringing that woman into our home." Vivian's voice remained calm, controlled. "Now, I suggest you answer your phone." She seems quite persistent. "This isn't how I wanted." "Answer the phone," Vivian repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Bruce's shoulders slumped in defeat as he pulled out his still-ringing phone. He stood, moving toward the patio doors, but Vivian's voice stopped him. "Stay right here. I want to hear what your girlfriend has to say." Bruce hesitated, then accepted the call, putting it on speaker. Marina's voice, high and hysterical, filled the dining room. "Bruce, what the hell is happening to me?" she shrieked. "My skin is covered in dark patches. They're getting worse by the minute." Bruce looked at Vivian, panic evident in his eyes. "Marina, calm down." "What do you mean, patches?" "Don't play dumb. My face, my chest, my arms, everywhere the sun hit after swimming in your pool. I look like I have some kind of disease. I had to cancel my photo shoot tomorrow. The makeup artist just called and said she can't cover this kind of discoloration." "Have you seen a doctor?" Bruce asked, his voice strained. "I'm in the emergency room now. They're saying it looks like a severe phytophotodermatitis reaction from your pool." Vivian raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. Marina had already received a diagnosis. The girl was more efficient than Vivian had given her credit for. "I don't understand," Bruce stammered. "The pool was fine." "Obviously it wasn't fine." Marina's voice broke. "The doctor says this could last for months, Bruce. Months! I can't work like this. I can't even show my face in public." Vivian leaned forward. "Hello, Marina. This is Vivian Doherty, Bruce's wife." A shocked silence fell on the other end of the line. Then, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" "Yes, that's right," Vivian continued calmly. "I believe you left your earrings by our pool last week. Turquoise stones? Costume diamonds? Not really my style, but perhaps you'd like them back." "Bruce?" Marina's voice was now a horrified whisper. "You said she was at a conference. You said she wouldn't be back until tomorrow." "Plans change," Vivian replied before Bruce could speak. "Much like skin tone, apparently." You did this," Marina accused. "You put something in the pool." "That's a serious allegation," Vivian responded, her attorney voice taking over. "One you'd have difficulty proving. Pools contain chemicals. Sun exposure causes reactions. Perhaps you have sensitive skin. Bruce, Marina wailed. Are you just going to stand there? Say something. Bruce looked like a man watching his life collapse around him. Marina, I'll call you back. Don't bother, she spat. We're done. Do you hear me? Done. And when my doctor confirms what caused this, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. The call ended abruptly. Bruce lowered the phone, staring at Vivian with a mixture of fear and dawning realization. What did you do? He whispered. Vivian stood, gathering their plates. I have no idea what you're talking about. Perhaps the pool chemicals need checking. You said yourself the pH might be off. This isn't about pool chemicals. Bruce's voice hardened. You did something to the water. You knew she would be here. Did I? Vivian carried the plates to the kitchen, Bruce following close behind. That would imply I knew my husband was bringing another woman to our home while I was supposedly out of town. That I knew this woman, who is apparently a model, would be swimming in our pool and sunbathing beside it. She turned to face him. Is that what you're suggesting, Bruce? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. Stop with the lawyer talk. Just tell me what you put in the pool. Nothing that wasn't already in our garden, Vivian replied cryptically. She brushed past him, returning to the dining room to collect their wine glasses. The question you should be asking yourself is what happens now. Bruce followed her, his initial shock giving way to anger. You've ruined her career. She could sue us. Sue you. For what? Vivian laughed, the sound hollow and cold. For maintaining my own pool? Good luck proving anything, especially with your security footage mysteriously missing and no evidence of tampering. She set the glasses in the sink with deliberate care. Besides, any lawsuit would make public the fact that you were bringing your mistress to our marital home. I wonder what your clients would think of that, or your mother. The mention of his mother deflated Bruce's anger instantly. Noelle Doherty had always adored Vivian, had practically adopted her as the daughter she never had. The thought of his mother learning about his betrayal seemed to hit Bruce harder than any legal threat. What do you want? He asked quietly. Tonight? For you to sleep in the guest room. Vivian leaned against the counter, suddenly tired of the confrontation, of the whole sordid mess. Tomorrow, we'll discuss separation terms. I suggest you start looking for an apartment. Vivian, we can work through this. Couples therapy. No, she cut him off. We can't. You didn't just have an affair, Bruce. You brought her into our home. You let her use our pool, drink our wine, sleep in our bed. You systematically dismantled every boundary of respect in our marriage. She shook her head. There's no coming back from that level of betrayal. Bruce's phone chimed with a text. He glanced at it, his expression crumpling. She's posted about it online. Tagged me. Says I poisoned her. Social media. Vivian sighed. So dramatic these days. I wouldn't worry too much. Given her condition, I doubt she included photos. As if on cue, Bruce's phone began buzzing with notifications. Friends, colleagues, clients, all seeing Marina's accusations in real time. His professional reputation, built carefully over decades, was unraveling with each passing second. This will ruin me, he whispered. Perhaps, Vivian acknowledged. But that's the thing about consequences, Bruce. They have a way of finding us, no matter how carefully we try to avoid them. She moved past him toward the stairs. I'm going to bed. Don't forget to turn off the lights when you're done cleaning up. As she climbed the stairs to their bedroom, her bedroom now, Vivian felt a curious lightness. The weight of suspicion and betrayal that had pressed on her chest for weeks was lifting. Tomorrow would bring complications, legal discussions, the beginning of dismantling 15 years of marriage. But tonight, she would sleep soundly, knowing that justice, in its own peculiar way, had been served. Behind her, Bruce remained in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of his carefully prepared dinner, staring at his phone as his professional and personal life imploded in real time. He had sown deception in their pool. Now he was reaping its bitter harvest. Morning light filtered through the bedroom curtains, painting golden stripes across Vivian's face. She awoke feeling strangely refreshed, despite the emotional earthquake of the previous evening. For weeks, she had carried the burden of suspicion, then knowledge, then planned revenge. Now, at last, she could breathe again. She stretched languidly, her hand automatically reaching for Bruce's side of the bed, before remembering he had spent the night in the guest room. Some habits would take time to break. Vivian showered and dressed with deliberate care, selecting a casual but elegant Sunday outfit, linen pants and a silk blouse in a shade of green that brought out her eyes. Armor of a different sort for a different kind of battle. From downstairs came the smell of coffee and the gentle clinking of dishware. Bruce was awake then. Good. They had much to discuss. She found him at the kitchen island, hunched over his phone, a mug of untouched coffee beside him. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing the same clothes from the previous day. He glanced up as she entered, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and wariness. "Your face," Vivian observed, gesturing to a series of angry red blotches visible on his neck and extending beneath his collar. "Interesting development." Bruce's hand flew to his neck, touching the patches self-consciously. "It started last night after you went upstairs, getting worse by the hour." Vivian poured herself coffee, hiding her satisfaction behind the mug. "Perhaps you should see a doctor. Might be an allergic reaction." "To what? The same thing that affected Marina?" Bruce's voice took on an accusatory edge. "What did you put in the pool, Vivian?" She took a deliberate sip before answering. "I believe I already answered that question. Nothing that wasn't already in our garden." Bruce's expression shifted as realization dawned. "Lemons," he whispered. "You put lemon juice in the pool." Vivian didn't confirm or deny, merely raising an eyebrow as she selected a bagel from the bread box. "How is Marina this morning? Still melodramatic about her modeling career?" "She's been messaging all night." Bruce scrubbed his hand over his face. "The discoloration has spread to her chest and back, dark brown patches. The doctor confirmed it's phytophotodermatitis, a reaction between plant oils and sunlight. Said it's commonly caused by lime or lemon juice." He looked up at Vivian, anger flickering behind his exhaustion. "She's threatening a lawsuit." "On what grounds?" Vivian asked calmly, slicing her bagel with precision. "Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Property liability. She knows you did this deliberately." "Knowing and proving are very different things, Bruce." She placed the bagel halves in the toaster. "As are suspicion and evidence. You should understand that, being married to an attorney for 15 years. This isn't a game, Vivian." Bruce slammed his palm on the counter. "She's talking to lawyers. Real lawyers." "Good for her," Vivian replied, unfazed by his outburst. "I would recommend someone who specializes in personal injury, though I doubt she'll find much success. Proving that I deliberately contaminated our pool rather than, say, making lemonade and accidentally spilling some would be nearly impossible." She retrieved her bagel, applying a thin layer of cream cheese. "Besides, any lawsuit would require her to explain why she was in our pool in the first place. I imagine that would be an uncomfortable conversation for both of you." Bruce stared at her, incredulous. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "It's what I do." Vivian took a bite of her bagel, chewing thoughtfully. "Though I admit, I didn't anticipate you developing the same reaction. That's an interesting bonus. Did you go back in the pool after I arrived home?" "I rinsed off with the garden hose," Bruce admitted reluctantly. "After cleaning the patio furniture. Must have been enough contact." He scratched absently at his neck. "It's spreading. I've got patches on my chest and arms, too." "How unfortunate." Vivian's voice contained not a hint of sympathy. "Well, I'm sure it will fade, eventually. The literature suggests anywhere from 1 to 6 months, depending on severity." Bruce's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at it, his face paling further. "It's my mother. You should answer it," Vivian suggested mildly. "Noelle doesn't like to be kept waiting." Bruce hesitated, then accepted the call, deliberately not putting it on speaker this time. "Hi, Mom." Vivian could hear Noelle's voice, though not her exact words, just the unmistakable tone of maternal disappointment and anger. Bruce winced, holding the phone slightly away from his ear, as Noelle continued what was clearly a thorough dressing down. Vivian sipped her coffee, making no effort to give him privacy. "I don't know what you're—" Bruce tried to interject, but Noelle apparently cut him off. He listened for another full minute, his shoulders slumping further with each passing second. "Yes, I understand. No, Yes, she's here. I'll tell her." He ended the call, placing the phone face down on the counter. "Noelle sends her love?" Vivian asked innocently. Bruce closed his eyes briefly. "Marina tagged her in the social media posts last night. Apparently, she found Mom's profile and decided she should know what her son has been up to." He shook his head in disbelief. "Mom wants to know if she should still come for her visit next month, or if you'd prefer some time alone. She also wants you to call her later. Said she doesn't want to lose a daughter just because her son is—" He paused, swallowing hard. Her exact words were, "a disrespectful, adulterous disappointment." Despite everything, Vivian felt a surge of affection for her mother-in-law. Noelle Doherty had always been a formidable woman, with a moral compass as strong as her personality. "I'll call her this afternoon," Vivian promised, "and tell her the visit is still on. I've always enjoyed her company." Bruce nodded, a flash of hurt crossing his face at the realization that his mother and wife would maintain their relationship even as his marriage dissolved. He reached for his coffee, wincing as the movement stretched the irritated skin on his arms. "What happens now?" "Now we discuss logistics," Vivian answered. "All business. I've taken the liberty of preparing separation documents." She extracted a folder from her briefcase by the kitchen door. "Simple terms. We sell the house and split the proceeds according to our prenuptial agreement. You'll recall that stipulates a 60-40 split in my favor, given that my income provided the majority of the down payment." Bruce stared at the documents she slid across the counter. "You've already had these drawn up? When?" "I've had a contingency plan since I found that earring," Vivian replied matter-of-factly. "I'm nothing if not prepared. And if I don't agree to these terms, then we move to a contested divorce, where I would be forced to submit evidence of your infidelity, including the video recordings from my garden camera." Vivian's voice remained even, almost conversational. "Given California's community property laws and the existence of our prenup, a contested divorce would likely yield the same financial outcome, but with significantly more public embarrassment for you. Additionally, the discovery process would almost certainly impact your professional reputation further. Several of your clients follow Marina on social media, I notice." Bruce's face contorted with a mixture of anger and resignation. "You've been monitoring my client list?" "I've been thorough," she corrected. "It's what makes me an excellent attorney. Now, shall we proceed with the separation agreement, or would you prefer the more dramatic option?" Bruce snatched the papers, flipping through them with growing dismay. "You're asking for the car, too? We bought it together." "Check the registration," Vivian suggested. "It's solely in my name. A tax decision we made 3 years ago, if you recall." The reality of his situation was clearly dawning on Bruce. The comfortable life he had built, largely due to Vivian's financial success, was crumbling before his eyes. His expression shifted from outrage to calculation. "And if I contest the prenup? Claim it was signed under duress?" Vivian actually laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. "Please do. I'd enjoy watching Judge Williams's expression when you try to argue that a legal document prepared by one of the top family law attorneys in the state, me, and reviewed by your own independent counsel before signing, was somehow executed under duress." She leaned forward. "But more importantly, Bruce, do you really want to prolong this process? With those marks on your face and neck getting more noticeable by the day? With Marina tagging your clients and colleagues in her social media meltdown?" Bruce's hand went to his neck again, his resistance visibly crumbling. "How soon do I need to move out?" "I've generously allowed 2 weeks in the agreement," Vivian replied, "though I'd appreciate it if you could find accommodations sooner." "The guest room isn't particularly comfortable, is it?" "Where am I supposed to go?" Bruce muttered, more to himself than to Vivian. "Apartments in this area cost a fortune." "Perhaps your mother has a spare room," Vivian suggested, knowing full well that Noelle would rather host a pack of wild dogs than her adulterous son at this moment. "Or maybe Marina's place has room, though I imagine she's not particularly eager to see you right now." Bruce's phone buzzed with yet another text. He glanced at it, his face falling further. "It's from Lawrence Reed. He's pulling his project from the firm. Says he can't work with someone with questionable personal ethics." Lawrence Reed was one of Bruce's biggest clients, a developer who had commissioned multiple residential projects over the years. His departure would be a significant financial blow. Vivian felt a momentary twinge of sympathy. She had never intended to destroy Bruce's career, merely to make him face consequences for his betrayal. But she quickly reminded herself that these were the natural results of his own actions, not her intervention. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, with more sincerity than Bruce might have expected. "Perhaps, once this situation calms down, you can reach out to rebuild that relationship." "Calms down?" Bruce gestured to his face, where the red patches were noticeably darkening. "Vivian, I look like I have some kind of disease. I have client meetings next week, presentations. How am I supposed to face them looking like this?" "The same way I was expected to face our friends and colleagues not knowing my husband was bringing another woman into our home," Vivian replied, her momentary sympathy evaporating. "With dignity and professionalism. Though in your case, perhaps some high-coverage foundation might help. I'm sure Marina could recommend a brand." Bruce slumped onto a bar stool, the fight draining out of him. "I made a mistake, Vivian. A terrible mistake. But does it have to end like this? 15 years. Just over?" "It ended the moment you brought her into our home," Vivian said quietly, the hurt she had been suppressing finally surfacing. "Not just an affair, Bruce. You brought her here. You let her swim in our pool. You served her our anniversary champagne. You gave her access to the most intimate parts of our life." She shook her head. "That level of disrespect isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of deliberate choices that showed exactly how little our marriage meant to you." Bruce had no response to that. He stared down at the separation papers, defeat written in every line of his body. "I'll sign," he finally said, "and I'll start looking for an apartment today. Thank you." "Butters," Vivian gathered her coffee cup and plate, moving to the sink to rinse them. "I'll be working from home tomorrow, but I have depositions all day Tuesday. I'd appreciate it if you could begin moving your essential items while I'm out." Bruce nodded mutely, still staring at the papers. The man who had once been her partner, her confidant, her future, now reduced to a soon-to-be ex-husband with darkening patches on his skin and a rapidly disintegrating professional reputation. Vivian felt no triumph in his downfall, only a profound sadness for what might have been had he made different choices. As she turned to leave the kitchen, Bruce's voice stopped her. "The lemons," he said softly. I wouldn't have thought of that." Vivian paused in the doorway. "No," she agreed, "you wouldn't have." She left him there, surrounded by the wreckage of his decisions, the acidic scent of consequences still lingering in the air. 6 months had passed since the day Vivian had watched Marina and Bruce panic by the pool. 6 months of lawyers, paperwork, property assessments, and the gradual dismantling of 15 years of shared life. The divorce had been finalized with surprising efficiency, largely due to Bruce's reluctance to contest any of Vivian's terms. His once handsome face, marred by irregular dark patches that had taken months to fade, had become a visible reminder of his betrayal every time he looked in the mirror. The sprawling house with its infinity pool, the scene of both betrayal and revenge, had sold quickly, despite the softening real estate market. Vivian had used her portion of the proceeds to purchase a smaller but equally elegant home in a neighboring community, one without a swimming pool. The thought of chlorine and water now left a bitter taste in her mouth. Instead, her new backyard featured an expansive garden with raised flower beds and a small fountain, a peaceful sanctuary where she could begin again. On this crisp autumn morning, Vivian stood in her new kitchen preparing coffee for her visitor. The doorbell chimed, and she smoothed down her blouse before answering, though she knew her appearance was impeccable as always. "Darling girl." Noelle Doherty embraced her the moment the door opened, enveloping Vivian in the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5 and maternal affection. At 73, Bruce's mother remained a striking figure, tall and straight-backed, with elegantly coiffed silver hair and the same blue eyes as her son, though hers held a wisdom and moral clarity that Bruce's had always lacked. "It's so good to see you," Vivian said, returning the embrace with genuine warmth. Of all the relationships she had feared losing in the divorce, her connection with Noelle had concerned her most. But Bruce's mother had made it abundantly clear where her loyalties lay from the moment she had learned of her son's betrayal. "Let me look at you," Noelle said, holding Vivian at arm's length. "Divorce agrees with you, my dear. You're positively glowing." Vivian laughed, leading Noelle into the kitchen where coffee and freshly baked scones awaited. "I don't know about glowing, but I'm finding my way." "This place is lovely," Noelle commented, glancing around the bright open space. "Much more you than that mausoleum you shared with my son, though I did enjoy the view from there." "The view here is different, but equally beautiful," Vivian said, gesturing toward the French doors that opened onto her garden, where late autumn flowers still bloomed in carefully planned arrangements. "I've discovered I have a knack for gardening. Something about creating beauty from nothing." Noelle accepted the coffee Vivian offered, her shrewd eyes missing nothing. "And how is the practice? I imagine you've been busy." "Busier than ever," Vivian acknowledged, taking a seat across from her former mother-in-law. "I've developed something of a specialty in high-asset divorce cases, particularly for women in situations similar to mine. It turns out, personal experience lends a certain credibility." "I can imagine," Noelle murmured. "And the prenuptial work?" "That too," Vivian smiled. "You'd be surprised how many women come to me after hearing about my situation. They want to protect themselves before saying, 'I do.' I consider it preventative legal medicine." They chatted comfortably about Noelle's recent travels and Vivian's cases, carefully avoiding direct mentions of Bruce until they had finished their first cup of coffee. Finally, Noelle set down her cup with a deliberate motion that signaled a shift in conversation. "I suppose you're wondering how he is," she said, her voice carrying no judgment, merely acknowledgement of the elephant in the room. Vivian hesitated. "I admit to a certain curiosity. Professional curiosity, mostly." "Professional?" "Of course." Noelle's lips quirked in a knowing smile. "Well, professionally speaking, he's struggling. Lost 3 more major clients in the aftermath of that woman's social media campaign. The discoloration on his face lasted nearly 4 months. Quite the conversation piece at the country club, I'm told." Despite everything, Vivian winced slightly. She had wanted consequences for Bruce, not complete professional destruction. And, personally, living in a depressingly small apartment on the unfashionable side of town. Dating again, though no one of consequence. Noelle's expression made it clear what she thought of her son's romantic choices. "He asks about you, you know." "Does he?" Vivian was genuinely surprised by this. "Wants to know if you're seeing anyone, if you're happy." Noelle reached across the table to pat Vivian's hand. "I told him that was no longer his business, but that you seemed to be thriving without him." Vivian felt an unexpected wave of emotion. Not longing for Bruce, but gratitude for Noelle's unwavering support. "Thank you for that, and for continuing our relationship. It would have been easier to choose your son." "Easier, perhaps, but not right." Noelle's expression hardened slightly. I raised him to respect women, to honor his commitments. What he did to you, bringing that woman into your home, that was beneath contempt. I won't excuse it, simply because we share DNA. Vivian squeezed Noelle's hand in silent appreciation before rising to refill their coffee cups. As she poured, Noelle's next words caught her off guard. I met her, you know. The mistress, Marina. Vivian nearly spilled the coffee. You what? When? About 2 months ago. She approached me at Nordstrom, of all places. Noelle accepted the refreshed cup, her expression unreadable. Recognized me from social media, I suppose. The discoloration had mostly faded by then, though there was still a noticeable patch along her jawline. She tried to cover it with makeup, but you could see it in the department store lighting. What did she want? Vivian asked, trying to mask her intense curiosity. To explain herself, I think. To justify her actions. Noelle took a delicate sip of coffee. She claimed she didn't know Bruce was married at first. Said by the time she discovered the truth, she was already in love with him. The older woman's tone made it clear exactly what she thought of this claim. I informed her that adults verify such important details before engaging in relationships, and that love doesn't justify participating in deception. Vivian couldn't help but smile at the image of Noelle delivering this lecture in the middle of Nordstrom's cosmetics department. How did she take that? About as well as you'd expect. Huffed away, muttering about judgmental old women. Noelle's eyes twinkled with amusement, but not before informing me that Bruce had been emotionally neglected in your marriage, which apparently justified everything. The familiar accusation, the last refuge of caught adulterers, stung less than Vivian might have expected. And what did you say to that? I told her that adults discuss their emotional needs with their spouses rather than seeking validation elsewhere, and that nothing justified the disrespect they had shown to you and your home. Noelle straightened a napkin with precise movements. Then I suggested she might find the Estée Lauder counter helpful for her residual discoloration issues. Vivian laughed out loud, a genuine, unrestrained sound that seemed to fill the kitchen. Noelle, you are magnificent. I simply believe in accountability, the older woman replied with dignity, though her eyes danced with mischief. Speaking of which, have you heard from any of her threatened legal actions? Not a word, Vivian confirmed. As expected. Her lawyer likely explained the impossibility of proving deliberate contamination and the complications her own behavior would introduce to any case. She broke a scone in half, considering her next words carefully. I never actually admitted to anything, you know. Not to Bruce, not to anyone. Nor should you, Noelle agreed promptly. Though between us, my dear, I must say, the lemon juice was inspired, elegant, temporary, yet dramatically effective. If one were hypothetically planning such a thing, of course. Vivian's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. Hypothetically speaking, the internet is a remarkable resource for creative problem-solving. They shared a moment of perfect understanding before Noelle changed the subject. Now, tell me about this Clark person you mentioned, the one who asked you to dinner? Michael Clark, Vivian corrected, feeling an unexpected flush creep into her cheeks. He's a forensic accountant who testified in one of my cases last month. Brilliant at tracking hidden assets in divorce proceedings. We've had coffee twice. Purely professional, of course. Of course, Noelle echoed, her knowing smile suggesting she didn't believe this for a moment. And will you accept his dinner invitation? It seems a logical next step from coffee. Vivian hesitated, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. I'm not sure I'm ready for that step yet. The divorce is still fresh. 6 months is hardly fresh, Noelle countered. And dinner is just dinner, unless you decide it's more. She leaned forward, her expression softening. Vivian, you've handled this entire ordeal with remarkable grace and dignity. You've rebuilt your home, refocused your career, even maintained civility with me, despite my unfortunate biological connection to your ex-husband. Perhaps it's time to allow yourself to explore the possibility of joy again. Joy, Vivian repeated, as if testing the word. I'm not sure I remember what that feels like in a relationship context. Then perhaps Mr. Clark might refresh your memory, Noel suggested gently. Or perhaps not. The point is, you deserve the opportunity to find out. Later, after Noel had departed with promises to return the following month, Vivian wandered into her garden. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the flower beds she had planted with her own hands, each bloom selected for its meaning and resilience. She settled onto a stone bench beside a cluster of bright yellow marigolds, symbols of passion and creativity, and pulled out her phone. The text message she composed was simple. Dinner on Friday would be lovely. Send details, and I'll meet you there. She hesitated only briefly before pressing send, watching as the message to Michael Clark delivered with a soft whoosh. His response came almost immediately, a restaurant suggestion and a time, followed by, "Looking forward to it more than I probably should admit in a text." Vivian smiled, tucking the phone away and leaning back to enjoy the gentle breeze that rustled through her garden. 6 months ago, she had stood in her former kitchen, squeezing lemons and planning revenge against the husband who had betrayed her. Today, she sat in a garden of her own creation, contemplating a dinner that might, or might not, lead to something more. Life had a curious symmetry sometimes, she reflected. The acidic bitterness of betrayal had eventually yielded to new growth, just as the harsh winter inevitably gave way to spring's renewal. She had not merely survived Bruce's infidelity, she had emerged stronger, wiser, and increasingly certain of her own worth. The divorce settlement had been financially favorable, as she had anticipated. The house sale had provided enough for her to not only purchase this new home, but also to establish a foundation that provided legal assistance to women who couldn't afford quality representation in divorce proceedings. Ironically, Bruce's betrayal had ultimately enabled Vivian to help dozens of women protect themselves from similar situations, a legacy far more meaningful than their marriage had become. As for Bruce, the last she had heard through mutual acquaintances, he had finally secured a new position with a smaller architectural firm, though at a significantly reduced salary. The discoloration on his face and chest had eventually faded, leaving only the faintest shadow along his jawline, a subtle but persistent reminder of consequences every time he looked in the mirror. His mother maintained a distant but civil relationship with him, though Noel made it clear to anyone who asked that her loyalties remained firmly with Vivian. Marina had apparently moved to another state, her modeling career in tatters after months of visible discoloration that even the most skilled makeup artists struggled to conceal. Her social media accounts, once filled with glossy professional photos, had gone suspiciously quiet. The last post Vivian had seen, sent to her by a well-meaning colleague who didn't know the full story, showed Marina with noticeably darker patches along her hairline and neck, promoting a new chapter in a different city. Vivian felt no pleasure in their continued struggles, only a sense of appropriate closure. The scales of justice had balanced, not through courts or legal proceedings, but through the natural consequences of actions and choices. She had not destroyed Bruce or Marina. They had done that themselves by choosing to disrespect her home and marriage. She had merely accelerated the inevitable reckoning. As twilight descended over her garden, Vivian stood and brushed invisible dust from her slacks. She had client files to review before bed, and now a dinner to anticipate. Inside, she paused by the kitchen counter where a small bowl of lemons sat in decorative display. She had placed them there deliberately when first moving in, not as a reminder of revenge, but as a symbol of transformation. Those bitter fruits had catalyzed her freedom, launching her into this new life where she answered to no one but herself. Vivian picked up a lemon, feeling its weight in her palm, the slight roughness of its skin against her fingers. Then she placed it back in the bowl with a soft smile. The past had served its purpose. Now it was time to step fully into the future she was creating for herself. One client at a time, one garden bed at a time, and perhaps, beginning Friday evening, one dinner at a time. The path ahead was unwritten, but for the first time in years, Vivian Dougherty felt genuinely excited to discover where it might lead. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same strength and clarity that had carried her through these past 6 months. The betrayal had broken her marriage, but it had failed to break her spirit. And that, she reflected as she closed the garden door behind her, was perhaps the most satisfying revenge of all. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.